picture this for a moment. You've just been handed the reins to the world's most powerful decision-making body for global peace and security. Right. Not for a day, but for an entire month. That's a staggering thought, isn't it?
It really is. The sheer weight of it.
The sheer weight of setting the international agenda, influencing discussions that literally shape nations, guiding resolutions.
Yeah.
It resonates worldwide.
Yeah.
Well, for the month of July 2025, that's precisely the position Pakistan finds itself in. They've assumed the presidency of the United Nations Security Council.
And it's a truly pivotal diplomatic moment. It's far, far more than just, a ceremonial title.
Yeah, definitely not just ceremonial.
No. The UN Security Council, the UNSC, at its core, it's got 15 member states.
Right, the P5 and the elected members.
Exactly. You have the 5 permanent members, China, France, Russia, the UK, and the US, who, and this is crucial, hold veto power.
The veto, yeah. Always looms large.
It does. Then there are 10 non-permanent members, like Pakistan is now, elected by the General Assembly for 2-year terms.
And the presidency itself, it changes hands really quickly.
It does. What's particularly fascinating is that the presidency of this incredibly influential council rotates alphabetically among all 15 members each month.
Every single month, alphabetically.
Yep. This rapid rotation, it ensures a constant influx of diverse perspectives, different priorities at the helm, which is absolutely essential for a body dealing with such varied and, frankly, complex global challenges.
That's a crucial point. And for you, our dedicated listener, our mission with this deep dive is to truly unpack what this role entails.
Yeah, what does it really mean to be president?
It's not just about a nation getting its turn in the spotlight. We're going to explore Pakistan's stated diplomatic agenda, the key global issues that are highly likely to dominate the Security Council's discussions under its leadership this month.
And maybe most importantly, what can we realistically expect? What are the tangible outcomes?
Exactly. Our goal is to provide you with a comprehensive understanding of this critical moment in international relations, equipping you with the nuances essential for anyone interested in how global affairs actually work. So let's dive into the core of it.
Indeed. To grasp the potential impact, we first need to understand the very specific functions of the UNSC president. It's a seat of considerable influence, extending far beyond simply wielding a gavel.
Okay, so when a nation takes the gavel, what's the very first lever they pull? You mentioned the agenda setter role earlier.
That's the big one to start with.
That sounds like a powerful position, not just procedural, right? How much subtle strategic leverage does controlling the timing and framing of debates really give them?
Oh, it's immense, really immense. The president is directly responsible for drafting and then adopting the entire monthly program of work for the Security Council.
Entire program.
The whole thing. Think of it this way. They get to meticulously schedule all the crucial meetings, determine the specific topics for debates, and effectively set the stage for resolutions that can have profound global impacts.
So it's not just admin work.
Not at all. This isn't just about administrative scheduling. It's about controlling the flow of discussions, subtly but powerfully guiding where the council's attention and energy will be focused for that entire month.
How might that play out in practice?
Well, a savvy president could strategically place a sensitive topic after another unrelated discussion to maybe shift momentum or ensure specific issues are discussed when certain members might be more receptive.
Or maybe less prepared to object strongly.
Exactly, or perhaps even less prepared.
Yeah.
For instance, they might schedule a debate on a highly contentious political issue right before, say, a planned humanitarian briefing, hoping to leverage the emotional impact of the latter to encourage compromise on the former. It's about shaping the narrative and the diplomatic environment. They decide what gets debated and when, which is, an incredible leverage point in international diplomacy.
That sounds like a chess match on a global scale. Seriously.
It can be.
But while they're setting the stage, they also have to remain impartial as the presiding officer, right? They're chairing all the formal meetings. How do they possibly balance that impartiality with their own nation's interests? It sounds incredibly difficult.
It truly demands a delicate balance, a very fine line. The president must function as the presiding officer, meaning they chair all formal meetings of the Security Council.
Holding the gavel, keeping order.
Exactly. And this role demands not only a deep understanding of parliamentary procedure, but also exceptional diplomatic skill. Discussions within the council, as you can imagine, can be incredibly passionate, even heated,
I bet.
with deeply conflicting national interests at play. Imagine a room full of the world's most experienced and often, let's be honest, stubborn diplomats, each representing their country's geopolitical ambitions.
Yeah, high stakes, strong opinions.
Precisely. The president must manage these often intense discussions effectively, ensuring that all voices are heard and respected, but without letting the proceedings devolve into chaos or, worse, become a platform for grandstanding.
So, facilitating but staying neutral.
It's about maintaining order and focus while also remaining scrupulously impartial. They can't overtly allow their national bias to influence the facilitation of the dialogue, even when the topic directly impacts their own country.
That takes some serious skill.
It requires a rare blend of firmness and diplomatic grace, often needing to cut off irrelevant points or steer the conversation back on track without offending anyone, which is easier said than done.
Okay, so if they're trying to set the agenda and keep order, how much room is there for genuine facilitation and consensus building? I mean, this is a body notorious for its divisions.
It's true.
What's the toughest part of finding common ground when so many powerful national interests and the veto are at stake?
Well, that's where the real diplomatic heavy lifting comes in. It's crucial. Beyond just refereeing debates, the president actively has to be a facilitator and consensus builder.
More than just a referee.
Much more. In a body with such diverse and, yes, often conflicting national interests, they aren't just a passive observer. This involves a lot of behind-the-scenes work, endless informal consultations.
Backroom diplomacy.
Exactly. Bilateral, multilateral negotiations, tirelessly seeking common ground among member states, often in private meeting rooms away from the glare of the cameras. Their effectiveness in this role can literally determine whether critical issues move forward or remain deadlocked.
So the success of the month can hinge on this.
To a large extent, yes. It's incredibly challenging to achieve agreement among such powerful nations, each with their own strategic objectives, and especially with the veto power held by the P5 hanging over everything.
How do they even start?
A president might spend hours negotiating the precise wording of a resolution, knowing that one wrong word could trigger a veto or a walkout. They might identify an area of commonality, however small, and try to build outwards from there.
Finding that tiny sliver of agreement.
That's where the president's skill truly shines, in finding those elusive threads of consensus, nurturing them, and trying to weave them into something actionable.
And from those intense negotiations, often behind closed doors, the president then becomes the public face. They act as the council's spokesperson. How significant is that public-facing role, projecting the council's voice to the world?
It's vital. This public-facing role is vital because the president frequently speaks on behalf of all the members of the Security Council on a wider variety of pressing global issues.
Speaking for the whole group.
Yes, and this provides a crucial opportunity to articulate the Council's unified, or sometimes, as we know, the somewhat divided stance to the world. It's about communicating the Council's collective will, or maybe just its collective concern, to the international community.
So after a big meeting or a vote?
Exactly. After a major vote or a critical emergency session, it's the president who steps out to address the press, summarizing the council's decision and conveying its message.
That requires careful wording, I imagine.
Absolutely. It requires not only clarity, but also extreme precision, ensuring that the statement accurately reflects the consensus, even if that consensus is simply an agreement to disagree on certain points. It's their voice that shapes the immediate global perception of the council's actions.
And finally, on the roles, it feels like this position often throws the president right into the deep end of crisis management.
Oh, definitely.
They're not just dealing with planned meetings, but often responding to the world as it unfolds, right? What kind of real-time pressures are we talking about?
Precisely. The president is frequently thrust into the spotlight when urgent global crises erupt. Things happen fast, and it demands quick thinking, decisive action, and the ability to rally the council to respond effectively to new challenges.
Like what sort of crises?
Could be anything. From sudden humanitarian emergencies, like a massive earthquake leading to a call for immediate aid coordination, to rapid geopolitical escalations, like a border skirmish threatening a wider conflict.
So no time for deliberation sometimes.
It's a role that demands real-time pressure handling. Swift and coordinated action can literally save lives or prevent wider conflicts. Unlike some other diplomatic roles, the UNSC president has to be ready to convene an emergency session within hours, sometimes even minutes, if a crisis breaks out.
Ow, hours or minutes?
They might be working through the night, gathering information, consulting frantically with member states, preparing for a critical vote. This isn't theoretical, it's dealing with the harsh realities of global events as they unfold, with lives and regional stability often hanging in the balance.
connecting this to the bigger picture then, this means that Pakistan's ambassador, Ahmad, as their permanent representative to the UN, he's the one doing all this.
He's the one.
He'll be the face and voice chairing these crucial meetings. He's the one literally holding the gavel, negotiating in back rooms, addressing the press.
That's right. It personalizes the leadership of the presidency and places a great deal of responsibility directly on his shoulders and, by extension, on Pakistan.
His diplomatic skill, his ability to navigate these complex situations, it'll be under intense scrutiny.
It will be. But it also provides a unique platform for him and for Pakistan.
Okay, so with that incredible burden of responsibility on one nation's shoulders for a month, let's turn to Pakistan itself. What specific stamp do they hope to leave on the council during their presidency?
Good question. And it's important, as you said, to remember this isn't just a one-off appearance for them.
Right, they started their term earlier.
Pakistan actually began its current 2-year term as a non-permanent member of the Security Council back in January 2025. So this July presidency is a key, high-profile moment within their broader, sustained engagement with the Council's work.
So they've had time to settle in, figure out the dynamics.
Exactly, and Pakistan's consistent foreign policy stance will definitely shape their approach. What's interesting here is Pakistan's deeply ingrained commitment to specific principles.
Not just.
Their core stated goals for this presidency seem to be, first and foremost, a strong advocacy for multilateralism and peaceful resolution of conflicts.
Multilateralism. Working together.
Yes, and this isn't just diplomatic jargon for them, it's a consistent and deeply held tenet of their foreign policy. You see it again and again. They consistently champion dialogue and international law as the primary means of resolving disputes.
So diplomacy first.
Diplomacy first. This shapes how they approach global challenges, emphasizing that shared problems require shared solutions and that disputes are best resolved through established international frameworks, not unilateral action.
I can see why that focus would be paramount for them. But thinking practically, considering the intense power dynamics and, the veto mechanism within the council.
Yeah, the elephant in the room.
How challenging is it for a non-permanent member like Pakistan to truly push for peaceful resolution when permanent members might have vested interests in ongoing conflicts? Can they actually make headway?
That's precisely where the rubber meets the road for a non-permanent member, isn't it? While Pakistan's commitment to multilateralism is, I think, genuine, the real insight lies in how they navigate a council often paralyzed by unilateral interests and that ever-present veto power.
So what would success look like?
Their challenge, and maybe their potential win, would be demonstrating that even within a highly fractured body, sustained multilateral advocacy can still carve out small yet significant pathways for peace.
Small steps, maybe.
Exactly. For example, they might push hard for consensus on less contentious humanitarian aspects of a conflict, even when the big political solutions are deadlocked.
Okay, focusing on aid access, civilian protection.
Things like that. Or they might advocate for strengthened mediation efforts in conflicts that don't directly involve P5 interests quite so much. They understand, surely, that achieving a full political resolution for major conflicts might be beyond the scope of a one-month presidency.
Yeah, that seems realistic.
But they can push for processes, for norms, for incremental steps that align with their multilateral vision. It's about playing the long game, really, and finding the gaps where their influence can actually be felt.
Okay, that makes sense. And then there's a really specific focus that stood out in their stated goals. Cooperation between the UN and the OIC, the Organization of Islamic Cooperation.
Yes, that's quite specific.
This feels profound, doesn't it? Why is this particular collaboration so paramount for Pakistan, and what specific issues might they prioritize through this lens?
It definitely highlights a particular regional and cultural lens, you could say, on global issues that Pakistan brings to the table. Cooperation with the OIC is paramount for several reasons.
Well, what are the main ones?
Firstly, it provides a crucial platform for addressing issues that disproportionately affect Muslim-majority nations. These countries often face unique challenges ranging from conflict to humanitarian crises and even issues like Islamophobia.
Islamophobia is a growing concern globally.
It certainly is. So Pakistan, by leveraging its strong ties within the OIC, it's a leading member, could use its presidency to facilitate discussions on how to counter hate speech, promote religious tolerance, maybe ensure the protection of religious sites and communities.
Amplifying those voices.
Precisely. Amplifying voices and priorities that might otherwise receive less attention on the global stage within the UN framework.
Okay, so amplifying voices. What else?
Secondly, it fosters interfaith dialogue, promoting understanding and collaboration between the Muslim world and the broader international community. This can be vital in diffusing tensions and building bridges, especially when conflicts often take on religious or cultural dimensions, unfortunately.
Building bridges is key.
Absolutely. And thirdly, from a security perspective, this cooperation is crucial for coordinating and strengthening efforts in counterterrorism.
Counterterrorism. That links to another likely focus area.
It does. Many OIC member states have been directly impacted by this scourge, and presenting a united front provides more effective intelligence sharing, capacity building, and strategic responses against extremist groups. This allows Pakistan to leverage its strong ties within the OIC to bring a consolidated regional perspective to the global security agenda.
Okay, beyond those explicit goals, if we look at Pakistan's past engagements, their broader foreign policy, we can probably infer some other potential areas of focus during their presidency.
I think so, yes, based on their track record.
One that immediately comes to mind is peacekeeping operations. Pakistan has an incredibly impressive track record here, a major troop contributor to UN missions worldwide.
It really is remarkable, one of the largest and most consistent.
This isn't just a number, is it? It gives them a unique, ground-level perspective on the realities, the challenges, the complexities of actually maintaining peace in conflict zones.
Absolutely. Their contribution is huge. Pakistan has been one of the largest and most consistent troop-contributing countries to UN peacekeeping missions for decades. We're talking over 200,000 personnel having served in more than 40 missions across the globe: Sierra Leone, DRC, Bosnia, you name it.
Decades of experience.
Decades. This extensive experience means they understand the logistical hurdles, the dangers faced by peacekeepers, and tragically, Pakistan has lost many brave soldiers in the line of duty serving the UN.
That heavy price.
A very heavy price. And they understand the practicalities of implementing mandates on the ground, sometimes in incredibly volatile environments. They get the nuances of civilian protection, mandate implementation, the tricky business of exit strategies.
So how might they leverage that during the presidency?
They can leverage this by advocating, for example, for more robust mandates, perhaps better resources for peacekeepers, improved training, or more effective strategies for protecting civilians. It provides a credible and experienced voice when discussing the future and effectiveness of UN peacekeeping.
They can speak from experience.
They can speak from direct experience about what works and what doesn't, which lends significant weight to their proposals. It's not theoretical for them.
And given their own history, counterterrorism seems like another obvious area.
Yeah.
Pakistan has faced extensive, very challenging experiences with terrorism within its own borders for decades.
Yeah.
Especially post 9/11.
Yes, a long and difficult history.
How does that background inform their approach?
Yeah.
How might they bring a unique perspective to global strategies?
It provides them with a really nuanced and practical understanding of the issue, far beyond just theoretical discussions. Pakistan has been a frontline state in the fight against terrorism, enduring immense human and economic costs.
Huge costs.
Huge. This direct experience with the human cost and the complex roots of terrorism issues like financing, radicalization, cross-border movement of terrorists means they can bring a unique perspective to discussions on global counterterrorism strategies.
So what kind of approach might they advocate for?
They're likely to advocate for comprehensive approaches, ones that go beyond just kinetic operations, military action, to include addressing the underlying factors that contribute to radicalization, things like poverty, lack of education, marginalization.
Addressing root causes.
Exactly. As well as emphasizing the importance of international cooperation, intelligence sharing, and capacity building for states that struggle with the threat. They understand the multifaceted nature of the threat and the need for a holistic global response, including things like legal frameworks and judicial cooperation.
Then there's climate change. As a climate-vulnerable nation, Pakistan has experienced firsthand the devastating impacts of extreme weather. Those catastrophic floods they faced recently.
Horrific. Unprecedented scale.
Displacing millions. How might they use their presidency to push this issue not just as an environmental concern, but as a direct security threat?
This positions them uniquely, doesn't it? To advocate for greater recognition of climate change, not just as an environmental problem, but as a direct security threat.
Yeah.
The 2022 floods in Pakistan, for example, submerged a third of the country.
A third of the country.
Displaced over 33 million people, caused an estimated $30 billion in damages. It just showcased the immense destabilizing potential of climate disasters.
So how do they frame it as security?
Pakistan, having experienced such firsthand devastation, can champion a greater focus on climate security within the Council's mandate. They could initiate debates, perhaps propose resolutions that highlight how climate-induced resource scarcity, like water shortages in vulnerable regions, can exacerbate existing conflicts.
Fighting over water, for instance.
Exactly. Or how mass displacement due to climate events can create new humanitarian crises and put immense pressure on host communities, leading to instability. They might push for increased focus within the Council on the linkages between environmental degradation and global instability.
So, advocating for prevention.
Advocating for preventive measures, resilience building as part of the broader security agenda, maybe even viewing climate finance as a form of security investment. It's about connecting the dots.
They're finally regional stability. Obviously, their immediate neighborhood is a concern for Pakistan. How would they likely present that focus on regional stability within a global context during their presidency? Is there a risk of it being perceived as just looking out for number one, or can they genuinely frame it as a global concern?
That's a very insightful question. It's a fine line to walk. Pakistan would likely frame its focus on regional stability within the broader international security framework. They'd emphasize that localized peace and stability are intrinsically linked to broader international security.
The ripple effect.
Precisely. Instability in one region, especially one as strategically important as South Asia, often has ripple effects globally, whether it's through refugee flows, terrorist activity spreading, or economic disruptions.
So it affects everyone eventually.
That's the argument. So while their regional concerns are real and legitimate, their advocacy for stability would be articulated as contributing to the collective good of international peace, underlining the interconnectedness of global security challenges.
How would they make that case?
They would argue that investing in peace building and conflict resolution in one region ultimately benefits the entire international community. They might point to their own efforts, perhaps, to foster regional cooperation as a model. The key is to show how preventing conflict in their neighborhood contributes to global stability, rather than simply focusing narrowly on national interests.
Okay, that brings us to what July 2025 actually holds for the UNSC. Beyond Pakistan's specific vision, what are the undeniable global fires the UNSC will probably have to fight this month, regardless of who's holding the gavel?
Yeah, the inbox is always full, isn't it?
It seems like it. Let's start with the ongoing conflicts that continue to demand attention. Where is the focus likely to be?
Undoubtedly, conflicts will consume a significant portion of the Council's time and energy, for instance, the Sudan and Sahel region. It continues to be plagued by severe humanitarian crisis and persistent conflict.
The situation in Sudan sounds dire.
It's horrific. The ongoing conflict there has created the world's largest displacement crisis. Millions fleeing their homes, facing severe food insecurity. Under Pakistan's leadership, the Security Council might push for stronger international intervention.
Like what? More peacekeepers, more aid.
Perhaps strengthening peacekeeping mandates, demanding increased humanitarian aid access, which is often blocked, or maybe more robust diplomatic efforts aimed at mitigating the immense suffering of the civilian population.
What would they be aiming for?
The Council would be looking for pathways to de-escalation, protection of civilians, potentially through renewed ceasefire calls, or even considering things like targeted sanctions if the humanitarian situation deteriorates further. The challenge here, as always, is gaining consensus among P5 members who may have differing geopolitical interests in that region.
And of course, the Ukraine-Russia conflict. You mentioned the veto earlier. It's often led to stalemates at the UNSC because of Russia's veto power. But the humanitarian impact remains a critical concern.
Absolutely critical.
So how might this be addressed even with that diplomatic deadlock?
Well, even with the known limitations on finding a direct resolution at the UNSC due to the veto, discussions could still focus intensely on the humanitarian consequences, and they likely will.
What aspects specifically?
We're talking about millions of displaced people, immense civilian casualties, the destruction of critical infrastructure, and the ongoing challenges to global food security because of disruptions to grain exports from the region.
So what can the Council actually do?
There might be renewed, albeit challenging, diplomatic pushes for things like prisoner exchanges, for ensuring safe corridors for civilians, or for efforts to alleviate civilian suffering, like securing access for humanitarian aid in hard-to-reach areas.
Small practical steps again?
Sometimes that's all that's possible. While a comprehensive peace settlement remains elusive within the Council's direct influence, it's about finding avenues where consensus, even on specific humanitarian measures, or perhaps accountability for war crimes, can still be achieved. For example, there could be attempts to pass resolutions focusing solely on child protection in conflict zones, which might garner broader support across the board.
And then perennially, the Middle East. This region always presents complex dynamics. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict, situations in Syria, Yemen.
It's always on the agenda, a constant.
What specific developments or discussions might we anticipate there during Pakistan's presidency?
The Middle East is perpetually on the Council's agenda, and frankly, it often feels like a diplomatic pressure cooker. The Council might address any recent developments in regional tensions, specific conflict zones, or ongoing humanitarian needs.
Depending on what flares up.
Exactly. This could include urgent discussions around the status of the Israeli-Palestinian peace process if there are significant escalations, humanitarian access in conflict-affected areas like Syria, where millions still rely on cross-border aid, which is always politically fraught.
That aid corridor is always contentious.
Always. Or the complex situation in Yemen, which continues to face one of the world's worst humanitarian crises, often forgotten. Any new escalations, particularly those threatening regional stability or humanitarian emergencies, would immediately demand the Council's attention.
What's the core challenge there?
The challenge is often balancing the security concerns of various actors with the imperative of protecting civilian lives and ensuring compliance with international humanitarian law. It's an incredibly difficult balancing act.
Moving beyond direct conflicts, you've often highlighted how seemingly unrelated issues are increasingly becoming security concerns.
They absolutely are. The definition of security is broadening.
And climate change is certainly one of them, as we discussed with Pakistan's focus. How might they specifically champion this as a systemic security threat during their month? What kind of concrete discussions could emerge?
This increasing recognition that climate change isn't just an environmental issue, but a significant exacerbator, a threat multiplier, some call it, of conflicts and humanitarian crises is critical.
Threat multiplier, I like that term.
It fits. And Pakistan, as we discussed, is uniquely positioned to champion a greater focus on climate security within the Council's mandate because of their own experience.
So what could they propose?
They could initiate debates, maybe propose resolutions that highlight how climate-induced resource scarcity, think water shortages in vulnerable regions, can directly exacerbate existing ethnic or tribal conflicts over land or water.
Makes sense. Scarce resources lead to conflict.
Or how mass displacement due to climate events, floods, droughts can create new humanitarian crises and put immense pressure on host communities, leading to instability. They might champion resolutions calling for enhanced early warning systems for climate disasters, or promote preventive measures and resilience building as essential components of maintaining international peace and security.
Integrating climate into security planning.
Exactly. For instance, they could push for the UN system to systematically integrate climate risk assessments into its conflict prevention strategies and its peacekeeping operations. It's about shifting the narrative from solely an environmental concern to a core security one that requires a robust Council response.
And tied to that, humanitarian crises are sadly ever present. What kind of urgent actions might the Council consider beyond what we've already touched on regarding specific conflicts like Sudan or Ukraine?
Yeah, the overall humanitarian picture is grim globally. The Council would undoubtedly discuss major humanitarian emergencies worldwide that require immediate international attention and coordinated UNSC action.
Beyond specific war zones.
Yes. This could include urgent issues like widespread food insecurity, which affects tens of millions in places like the Horn of Africa or Afghanistan, independent of specific Council agenda items sometimes, or the plight of internally displaced populations and refugees globally. Their numbers are at an all-time high, straining resources everywhere.
What else falls under this?
Discussions would also cover ensuring access to essential services like healthcare, clean water, and education in conflict zones or areas hit by disaster. These discussions often lead to calls for increased humanitarian funding, safe passage for relief operations.
Demanding parties allow aid through.
Yes, demanding adherence to international humanitarian law by all parties to conflicts, and crucially, the protection of aid workers, who too often become targets themselves. The Council's role here is to mobilize international will and resources and to hold parties accountable for obstruction of humanitarian assistance.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, I think. Emerging technologies and global security.
Ah, yes, the new frontier.
We're talking about advancements like artificial intelligence in warfare, the growing challenges of cybersecurity. You've talked about how global threats are evolving. How are these advancements reshaping the way the UNSC thinks about peace and security, even if it's not the primary focus for this specific presidency?
This is a rapidly evolving frontier of global threats, and the UNSC is, maybe slowly, but increasingly aware of its profound implications. While AI and warfare or cybersecurity might not be the central theme of Pakistan's specific agenda for July.
Probably not top of their list.
Probably not. But the Council broadly has to consider how these advancements could profoundly impact international peace and security down the line. Think about autonomous weapon systems, killer robots, as the media calls them.
Scary stuff.
Where decisions about lethal force could potentially be made without meaningful human control. This raises massive legal, ethical, and accountability dilemmas. Who is responsible if an AI makes a mistake?
Huge questions.
Huge. Or the growing challenges of cybersecurity. We're seeing nation-state-sponsored cyber attacks crippling essential services like power grids or hospitals, interfering with democratic processes, even stealing sensitive national security data.
Warfare without bullets.
Exactly. These are non-kinetic forms of warfare that can be incredibly destabilizing. A forward-thinking presidency, maybe not this one, but in general, could use its platform to convene a high-level discussion on establishing international norms for responsible state behavior in cyberspace.
Trying to set some rules of the road.
Or even begin sketching out a framework for the regulation of autonomous weapon systems before they proliferate beyond control. This isn't just about preventing conflicts today, it's about defining the very rules of future warfare, which is a daunting but necessary task for the Council.
A daunting task indeed. And finally, a perennial item on the agenda that never goes away. Non-proliferation of weapons of mass destruction, WMDs.
Always there. Foundational security issue.
How might this surface during Pakistan's presidency, particularly with ongoing global concerns about certain states or non-state actors?
Non-proliferation remains an always standing item on the UNSC agenda, reflecting its fundamental importance to global stability. The Council sees its core role as preventing the spread and use of nuclear, chemical, and biological weapons.
So what triggers discussion?
Any new developments or concerns related to WMD proliferation, whether concerning specific states like Iran or North Korea, which are frequently discussed, or the terrifying prospect of non-state actors like terrorist groups acquiring such capabilities, that would certainly be brought to the forefront.
What kind of discussions happen?
It could involve discussions on adherence to treaties like the Non-Proliferation Treaty, NPT, or the Chemical Weapons Convention, maybe strengthening verification mechanisms by bodies like the IAEA, the Nuclear Watchdog, or responses to any perceived breaches of international obligations.
And given the current world situation?
Given the current geopolitical climate, the risk of WMD proliferation, especially amidst rising regional tensions, makes this a constantly urgent concern that demands the Council's enduring commitment.
Does Pakistan's own status affect this?
Well, Pakistan, being a nuclear power itself, albeit outside the NPT framework, has a unique perspective on the complexities of this issue. They would likely emphasize the importance of strategic stability, maybe arms control dialogues, and responsible stewardship among all nuclear weapon states.
Okay. This sounds like an incredibly busy and high-stakes month ahead for them. So let's try to wrap this up by looking at expectations and challenges.
Yeah.
What can we realistically expect from Pakistan's presidency, understanding the inherent limitations of the UNSC we've talked about?
Yeah, it's crucial to have realistic expectations. While the presidency is largely administrative in its core functions, managing meetings, setting agendas, the day-to-day running.
The mechanics of it.
Right. But it crucially allows the presiding nation to set a distinct tone for the month. It provides a unique opportunity to strategically emphasize certain issues, give them more prominence on the international agenda, and even influence the terms of the debate.
So they can shine a spotlight.
Exactly. For instance, Pakistan can make sure specific humanitarian crises, maybe ones they feel are neglected, are prioritized, or that climate security gets dedicated debate time. So while Pakistan can't unilaterally dictate outcomes,
Especially with the veto.
they can certainly steer the conversation, highlight issues they deem critical, and push for a particular focus within the Council's very busy schedule. They can use the pulpit, the platform, to draw global attention to topics that align with their foreign policy vision.
But there are also those inherent limitations of the UNSC that any nation holding the presidency has to contend with, right? It's definitely not a blank check of power.
Absolutely not. The fundamental challenges are deeply embedded in the Council structure, and they're formidable. They really are.
The veto being number one.
Foremost among these are the complex dynamics of veto power held by the 5 permanent members. Even if Pakistan somehow builds consensus among all 14 other members, a single veto from a P5 state can block a resolution completely.
We've seen that happen so many times.
Time and time again, particularly on issues related to major power interests like Ukraine or Syria or the Middle East. Then there are just the inherent differences in national interests among all 15 council members, making consensus building a constant, arduous process.
So how is success measured then?
Pakistan's effectiveness will largely depend on its ability to navigate these deep-seated complexities. Finding common ground where it exists, building coalitions, even temporary ones, sometimes among nations with historically divergent views. They'll have to employ every diplomatic tool in the book, bilateral chats, informal caucuses, careful drafting,
A lot of maneuvering.
to bridge divides and persuade members to compromise, even a little. It's a bit like trying to herd cats, as the saying goes, if those cats had nuclear codes and veto power.
That's a good analogy. Despite those challenges, though, this presidency offers a significant opportunity for enhancing Pakistan's soft power. Can you explain what soft power means in this context, and how leading such a prestigious body can actually boost a nation's international reputation?
Sure. Soft power, in simple terms, is the ability to attract and co-opt rather than coerce. It's influence through attraction, not force.
Persuasion, not pushing.
Exactly.
No.
It's the difference between forcing compliance and inspiring cooperation. It's about persuasion, influence, and the appeal of a nation's culture, its political values, its foreign policies.
So how does the presidency help with that?
For Pakistan, effectively leading the Security Council could mean building bridges with nations that might traditionally view it through a narrow regional or security lens, maybe a lens focused only on conflict. By demonstrating impartiality, diplomatic skill, and a genuine commitment to global peace and security.
By doing a good job, basically.
By doing a competent, fair job, Pakistan can significantly enhance its diplomatic standing and influence on the global stage. Successfully navigating complex debates, facilitating resolutions where possible, acting as a clear and respected voice for the Council, all of this can boost a nation's international reputation.
And what does that lead to?
It can foster new partnerships, increase its perceived competence and reliability in global affairs. Think of it like a country's cultural exports, maybe its film industry or music, subtly shifting perceptions abroad. This is diplomatic performance on the world's highest stage, and it can have tangible reputational benefits long after the month is over.
And finally, how might this high-profile role impact domestic and regional policy discussions for Pakistan itself? Is there a ripple effect back home and with its neighbors?
Oh, definitely. This role will undoubtedly be perceived and discussed extensively within Pakistan itself. Domestically, it can influence policy debates by highlighting the nation's role on the world stage.
A point of national pride.
It could certainly be framed that way, potentially strengthening the government's foreign policy narratives, or even impacting national priorities, especially when their chosen issues gain global prominence during their presidency. It can be a moment of national unity, perhaps.
And regionally, how might neighbors view it?
Regionally, it could be viewed in various ways by its neighbors. It might be seen positively as an opportunity for regional collaboration on shared issues, especially if Pakistan effectively champions multilateralism and peaceful resolution in a way that benefits the region.
But it could also cause friction.
It could. It could also lead to increased scrutiny or even suspicion, depending on existing diplomatic relationships and historical tensions. Neighbors will be watching very closely how Pakistan uses its platform.
What will they be looking for?
Whether it's seen as constructive for regional peace or if it's perceived as primarily advancing narrow national interests at the expense of others. It's a moment that places Pakistan squarely in the international spotlight. And that attention has both internal and external ramifications that foreign policy strategists in Islamabad will be keenly aware of.
Okay. To bring it all together then, Pakistan's assumption of the UN Security Council presidency for July 2025 is clearly more than just a procedural rotation, more than just their turn.
Much more, yeah.
It's a significant moment for the nation and for international relations generally. It offers a unique window into the most pressing global issues and the intricate, often frustrating dynamics of multilateral cooperation.
It really does.
It's a period where we get to see a non-permanent member step up and lead the charge, or try to, on some of the world's toughest challenges, demonstrating what effective diplomacy looks like in action, or the limits of it.
Indeed. It really underscores the continuous effort required to maintain international peace and security day in, day out. And the pivotal role, actually, of every single member state, not just the permanent ones, in shaping that future, however incrementally.
Every voice matters, even if some voices have vetoes.
Exactly. It's a testament to the idea that every voice in the Council has the potential to influence global outcomes, to shape the debate, even if they can't always shape the final vote.
So as we've explored the profound responsibilities and the strategic opportunities of this role, it raises, I think, an important question for you, our listener, to consider. Beyond the headlines, beyond what we've discussed Pakistan might focus on, what specific global issues do you believe should be at the very top of the UN Security Council's priority list this month?
What matters most right now?
Right. And why do you think they matter most? This is a moment for all of us, maybe, to reflect on the complexities of our interconnected world and truly ponder how global leadership functions or sometimes doesn't function, and what it really takes to steer the ship of international peace and security in these turbulent times.